Africa, first-time model in most countries in the world. And we didn't have a lot of comparatives to go with, but at least we have the statute and the constitution that was backing us up. We set up the process, we decided how the whole scenario would be run, how we would run the interviews, and how we would end up determining suitability. This was a great learning experience for me. I worked with very esteemed judges from the Commonwealth. I worked with one serving Chief Justice of Ghana, who actually came here also on a learning experience, because when she went back to her country, she actually vetted her judges. So that was a good opportunity for me. I learned at the feet of gurus in the judicial world, and it was really, really a lovely experience for me. We did a lot of stakeholder engagement. We had to manage the secretariat as a board, and it was a good opportunity for me. We finished the work in 2016 after successfully vetting all the judges and magistrates who were serving as of 2010. And when I left the vetting board, I went into consultancy work. Now, in my consultancy work, I have done work around violence against women and girls in elections. I've done work around peace and conflict management, peace building and conflict management. I have consulted on issues of elections, governance, and constitutional reforms for the Dialogue Reference Group, the NCCK, the National Council of Churches Kenya, and the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops. So I have both private sector and public sector experience, and these have honed my skills over time. I have good research skills, which I think will be very useful in this engagement. I have learned how to handle people, client handling skills, people handling skills from all these engagements. I have good legal analysis, and I can make good legal judgments. I have dispute resolution skills and management skills. I think those are skills that I really, really built in my private practice over time. And in private practice, you also learn to be a very formidable and firm person in your engagements, because you always have to strike a position, stand by it, and defend your client and your client's position. In the public sector, I think I came across stakeholder engagement, and we really did do a lot of stakeholder engagement at the vetting board, and this was very useful. I learned policy development because we had to develop a lot of policies, and even in my consultancies, I've continued to develop a lot of policies. I've done a gender policy for the National Police Service. I've done peace policies for some counties, so these are things we've done. I also learned about organizational structuring and organizational management, so that we learned how to work as an entity from scratch. And we actually had a very harmonious relationship between the board, the secretariat, and there was great teamwork in what we did. So teamwork is also a skill I built. But one great thing I think I really learned was ethical leadership. Ethical leadership involves integrity, involves honesty, involves accountability, involves transparency. And these are all virtues and values we had to have to be able to serve on the vetting board. Because we were determining the integrity of others, we had to be far above them. Otherwise, we did not deserve to be in that position. So ethical leadership was really one of the great virtues that I built there. And teamwork, of course, is another skill I built. So I have a well-rounded experience, Madam Chair, in terms of what I've done in terms of book learning and experience in the field, which both together make me a rounded individual. My motivation for applying for this job stems from lived experiences as a Kenyan. 2002, when I was working at the UNHCR, I was driving past Uhuru Garden on the Uhuru Park on the day that His Excellency Kibaki was to be sworn in. And you could feel the joy in the air, the hope amongst Kenyans. It was palpable. It was real, and people were hopeful. People thought this is a new feature, this is a new Kenya, it's here, it has arrived. And I was like, this is what we want, an election result that's accepted, and a peaceful transition. It was awesome. But shock on me, just 5 years later, I lived the 2007 elections in Eldoret. It was a traumatic experience. It was a sad experience and a sad time for Kenya. And I just told myself, if I can help Kenyans get an election like the 202, if I can be part of a process that delivers an election that is run with integrity and credibility, and that people accept the results, I'll be a proud person. And that's why I'm motivated to be here today and try and be part of that panel. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Rosalind. Please, can you confirm if you are a registered voter?
Yes, Dr. Muli, I am a registered voter. I registered using my passport. I am registered in Uasin Gishu. My constituency is Moiben. My ward is Kimumu. And I have voted at every election. Okay. Sometimes I have voted very early in the morning and taken the flight out just because I'm fearful of what comes after. But I am a registered voter.
Thank you for that. I just want to confirm, when you registered to be a voter, you used your ID or passport?
My passport.
You used your passport?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I used my passport.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll now request Mr. Morris Kimuli to ask you a few questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Rosalind, it's good to see you again.
Thank you. I know that I remember where we met in the last one. Thank you.
Yeah, it was in 2007 in Kisumu.
Wow. Okay.
So, you know, when you use the word formidable, it reminds me, my English teacher in high school, Miss Muidia, she's now deceased, used to tell me, you know, formidable is a good word. It's a good word you can use in your writing. And it's a word I like. But I want us to just have a conversation, because this session just is intended to, you know, establish, for us to have a conversation on the legal framework. And now that you use the word formidable, I just want to give you a short story and I ask you a question.
Okay.
On 15th of January 2012, there was a ship called Costa Concordia. It was captained by Francisco Schiletto.
Wow, okay.
Then it ran aground, it capsized, and the captain jumped out and left the passengers. And at that time, the Coast Guard kept shouting at him, telling him, go back to the ship, and he said it was dark. And when he was later on tried, he said he got out and he fell on a lifeboat. He was subsequently tried and convicted and sentenced to 16 years in 2015. And that was in accordance with an old maritime tradition that says that the captain goes down with the ship. Regardless of the circumstances, the captain is the last one to leave. Try to rescue everyone. If it is not possible to rescue, die trying. So I just want to ask you, Rosalind, are you a quitter?
No, I'm not a quitter.
You're not a quitter?
No.
I'm sure you have listened to Kenny Rogers' Lucille. Yeah, so, but we got a recommendation, a rosy one, by the way, for you, from the North Rift Law Society of Kenya. You worked in Eldoret.
Yes.
And Martin says that he can testify to your integrity and demonstrated leadership skills, and your integrity was confirmed by her recent resignation from the Law Society of Kenya on principle. It's in the public domain that the Law Society of Kenya has been going through a rough patch. It's in the public domain. I don't want us to get too much into that. But you were elected actually to represent the elders, the councillors, the seniors.
The elderly.
Yes.
The elderly.
Yes. Those who are supposed to provide guidance and counsel to the rest of us. Mm-hmm. And then midterm, you left, and you actually left when the house was burning. So what would you say to that?
Thank you, Mr. Kimwili, for that question. And I was quite expecting it to be raised. My resignation from the Law Society of Kenya was not a bolt in the rain. It was not a hasty decision. It was a critical ethical decision that I made after great introspection. Now, what happened is, as a council, I think one of the greatest undoings for us as a council is we came in during the COVID era. And we couldn't have physical meetings. We didn't have an induction. We didn't get an occasion to bond as a council. And that, I think, is something that helps towards cohesion of entities. Now, around August last year, we fell out as a council because of the issue of the CEO's disciplinary hearing. Now, post that falling out, I will tell you I did a lot of shuttle diplomacy. I tried a lot of mediation. I recruited senior lawyers to talk to either side and bring us together to mediate. One day we met in a room like this to try and mediate. One camp did turn up. I did a lot. I talked to individual council members. I talked to the president.
It didn't work.
I took efforts to try and mediate, reconcile us and whatever. But the teams are ego-ridden. They've refused to either align, reconcile, or transform. And what is the net effect of all this? The net effect is that we are failing in delivery of services to the members who elected us.
Yeah, so you tried every rule in the book, you tried every trick, and you decided, rather than be part of a failing institution, you left, and you left in principle.
I left not because I didn't want to be part of a failing institution, but out of a sense of responsibility and accountability to the members, because I feel the council has lost the legitimacy to continue to be in office. We are an elected team. We are not an appointment team. We are not in employment. We are here to serve members. And when we stop to serve members' interests, we lose the legitimacy.
So we are here today, we are gathered here today because 4 commissioners, when the heat, was rising after the 2017 elections, they bailed out. They left. 3 soldiered on and were able to, push the commission up to where we are. Mm-hmm. So, just briefly, if you encountered circumstances similar to what you encountered at the Law Society of Kenya with the commission. And I think at the commission, they come with stones, they stand there, and at that time they were coming, 3 times a week. And they were saying, you must go, you must go, you must go. Your view is that in those circumstances, there are circumstances that could make you quit other than your personal integrity.
Let me say this. For the commissioners who left, they did not leave because there was a claimer for them to leave. They left because of their own internal wrangles as a commission, and they couldn't agree on certain issues on what they needed to do. And I think they did not give it time. They did not give themselves as a commission time to try and reconcile or address the issues. They bolted. I did not bolt. I took time to think through this, and I am not a quitter. But when you lose the legitimacy to serve your people, even as a member of parliament, please leave.
You leave.
Please do leave.
Thank you very much. If you look at the qualifications for commissioners, the qualifications for the chair of the commission are actually different from the qualifications for the others, isn't it?
Yes.
They appear to be a little higher.
Yes.
Why do you think that is the case?
The IEBC is a commission that is very critical to democracy and governance in this country, for one. If the IEBC gets the elections wrong, this country can ban. So this is a position that should not be taken lightly. It's a very critical and important commission that plays a very critical and important role towards preserving peace and security in this country, towards preserving the democracy and democratic principles that we hold dear to this country. And also, if you look at it, The main difference is that the chair must be a lawyer who is worthy to be a judge and must have, of course, integrity. So again, I believe there's a lot of legal issues to be determined in an electoral process. So it's important that the chairperson also understands.
But does the chair bear a higher responsibility compared to the commissioners? Or do they have equal responsibility in terms of accountability?
Well, he bears a slightly higher responsibility as the chair of the commission, but again, there is collective responsibility of that commission at the end of the day.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Professor Ojwang, I don't know that he taught you, he used to tell us that there is a factor of history in the development of institutions. And in the case study, there was a question that was floated relating to registration of voters. And I want to look at the historical foundations of that. You know that after the 2007 general elections, there was war in this country, and you say that you experienced that. You know that we had the Kriegler Commission. You remember that?
Yes.
In your recollection, what recommendations did the Kriegler Commission make with respect to registration of voters as one of the solutions to the perennial problem of post-election violence?
I think one of the things they said, I'm not quite certain about this, but I think they said there must be continuous registration of voters and intended registration of all others who reach 18 without unnecessary restrictions.
Yes, they say that registration for IDs ought to be integrated with registration as a voter. Now, if you look at the existing legal regime, and this is a question that came out in your case study, do you think there is any legal framework for collaboration between IEBC and the Registrar of Persons, or do we need to develop one?
Okay. Maybe I start a little back on that question, on the issue of IDs. Now, if you look at the right to vote in Article 38, it's a right that goes to any adult. The right to be registered to vote is a right to any adult citizen. If you look at Article 81, 82, it also talks of just an adult citizen. If you look at the Elections Act, Section 3, it also says the right to vote accrues to an adult citizen. And actually, Article 36 says the right to vote accrues to every adult citizen without unnecessary restrictions.
Yes.
Now, Section 5 of the Elections Act is what introduced this ID as a restriction. So there are two ways to approach this. One,
now the regime is that you need an ID. I'm asking, is there a legal framework for collaboration between IEBC
there's no existing legal framework, and there would be need to amend the law to integrate the process.
Okay, thank you very much. It's there in Section 105.
Oh, it is?
It's there in Section 105
then I missed that.
of
Thank
the Elections Act. The Register of Persons is bound to cooperate and collaborate with IEBC.
Yeah, that cooperation is there.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is there is no seamless integrated system of once an ID is given, registration takes place. That's how I understood your question.
Okay,
I apologize. I know that collaboration exists and it is required and intended.
Okay, so let's move on to the next. If in election, the resolution of election disputes, within what time is an election petition supposed to be determined?
6 months.
Within 6 months. What about an appeal?
An appeal is also 6 months.
It's also 6 months. What about an appeal to the Supreme Court?
That has no time limit as of now.
There's no time limit.
Yes.
You remember one of the cases that critically assessed the question of time limitations for election petitions is the Mother Karua case. Do you know the principal holding in the Mother Karua case?
No, unfortunately not.
But you're also aware that Mother Karua also took that case to the East African Court of Justice.
Yes.
Do you know what issue she took to the East African Court of Justice?
I think the issue was that the delays in the determinations made it actually, the finding of the court in the Martha Karua case was that, I forget it. I think the finding in the court was that it was, I forget it, sorry, I forget it. Yes.
But the court found Kenya had breached her obligations under the EAC treaty, the East African Community Treaty. Maybe that is something that you need to look at. Just one question, because as members of Parliament, the court dealt with the sections of the law that deal with the right to recall. Do you know what the court said?
The right of recall exists, and it can only be exercised after 24 months of service, after 24 months of service, and up to 1 year to the termination of the term of a member of parliament who is to be recalled. And to exercise this right, it accrues to the members of that constituency to actually come up with a petition seeking to recall that member of parliament.
The reason why I'm asking Rosalind is that that position, as it exists in that law, was the subject of a constitutional petition on whether or not those provisions were constitutional or they were not. And that was the Katiba Institute case. I'm asking, do you know what the court said about the right to recall and those provisions?
No.
Okay, maybe you need to look at that.
Thank you.
Because quite a number of them were declared unconstitutional. They still exist in law, but were declared unconstitutional. All the best, Rosalind, and thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kimuli.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kimuli. I'll now request Dr. F.S. Abdallah to ask you a few questions, Rosalind.
Good afternoon, Madam again.
Good afternoon, Dr. Abdallah.
Right, I did enjoy that courting session. Yeah, learned a lot. Mine is, Rosalind, is who's the accounting officer at IEBC?
The CEO, the Chief Executive Officer.
The CEO comes from the secretary, yeah?
Sorry?
The secretary is the accounting officer.
Yeah,
Right?
the Secretary of the Commission and the Chief Executive
Then he
Officer
becomes,
of the
right.
Commission.
And the section 10, subsection 7 of the IEBC Act 2011 provides that the secretary should be the CEO of the commission. What other responsibilities are defined in that section for the CEO now?
The CEO has got to do to run the administrative functions of the Commission and implement policy that comes from the Commission.
That's all?
Well, and then he's in charge, he's head of the Secretariat. He's in charge of the Secretariat. He manages the directorates. He sets up the strategy and monitors and evaluates the implementation of policy and strategy.
So under that section, he's also the accounting officer, right?
Yes.
Right. Tell us now, under section 66 of the Public Finance Management Act, provides for the function of accounting officer of the judiciary, parliament, constitutional commissioners, and independent officers for us.
Yes.
So I'm asking you, what are the functions of the accounting officers and the responsibility under section 66 of the Public Finance Management Act? In the
Okay.
IBC, we talked about a CEO, right?
Yes.
What is this a function? Now,
Yes.
out of those responsibility, he's the accounting officer. Now, as an accounting officer, which of course runs in the other institution, what are the responsibilities?
Now, the accounting officer is in charge of the finances, all the finances of the entity in which he operates. Being in charge of the financing, he must be sure that the government budget cycle is adhered to, and the budget and the audit functions are also adhered to. So he must make sure that the financial records are ready in time for audits. He must ensure that the budgets are ready in time for submissions to Treasury. He must ensure that they attend the Treasury meetings to defend their budgets and also lobby into Parliament for finances. At the same time, he's also in charge of all expenses and expenditure of the entity, and he takes personal responsibility for any malfeasance that may happen around the finances at the entity. He's also part of the procurement processes. He doesn't sit in the procurement committee, but he oversights the procurement processes within the entity.
Thank you. Does he have to report to the National Assembly?
Sorry?
Does he have to report to the National Assembly?
Yes,
And how
he does.
often?
Yes. He has to report. He must make, I think, their annual reports on how they expended their total disclosure on how they managed, expended, and used the funds that they received. And they must also, again, attend Parliament to justify their budgets after that, yes. But they must make reports, annual reports on their expenses and others.
It's actually quarterly.
Yes.
SIGNET. Quarterly, annual becomes at the returns of it.
Okay.
He has to report quarterly. Right, Rosalind. If you were to be appointed a commissioner, you'd serve as a full-time commissioner with a permanent secretariat. In countries such as Benin, the electoral management body, the Autonomous National Electoral Commission, I don't know if they pronounce it right, is Commission Electorale Nationale Autonome, SENA, C-E-N-A. Is not a permanent body. Members of Senas are appointed on the eve of each election, and the commission is dissolved at the end of the election cycle. You aware of that?
Yes, Benin is where they also count beads sometimes for elections.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, A, in your assessment, what institutional weaknesses would such a model present?
Okay, I think such a model is basically very challenging because then the commissioners are more like observers. They were not part of the team that sets up the process, the systems, the planning, and therefore they cannot actually be aware of areas of risk. They cannot be aware of the challenges to expect. They cannot be able to rise up to any unexpected occurrences. Also, appointing them on the eve of the election means they are, they can be easily manipulated because they have not taken time to familiarize themselves with
And
the
they
system.
ought to be handpicked, isn't it?
Sorry?
They'll be handpicked.
Yes, they'll be
All right.
handpicked,
B,
yes.
reflecting back on the Kenyan election, what kind of challenges would such a model present in Kenya where the electoral management body is part-time? What if we are to adopt such a thing? What
Of
do you foresee?
electing commissioners on the eve of an election.
Right.
I think the political parties would just tear this country apart. They're always sending commissioners home because they have interest. So I'm sure it will even be a nightmare agreeing on the team to come in. It will be a challenge for the team to run the elections, and there'll be a lot of interference. There might even be state capture of the process.
Good.
It
So
will be
I can hear
difficult.
you saying it's a very bad system according for us is also, yeah? So what is the importance of having a permanent secretarial and full-time commission?
It's important to have a full-time commission so that, election is a process. It's not an event. So it's a process, and it occurs through the 5-year electoral cycle. So if you had commissioners just coming in to receive reports, we'll end up with a situation like 2017, where commissioners were recruited pretty late into the event, and they were not aware of what was happening. The Secretariat then captured the process and was leading them, and not the Commission leading the process. So I think it's important for the Commission to be in place full-time so that they can come up with guidelines, clarity in processes and policies so that they actually formulate policies and allow the Secretariat to implement, but they provide constant leadership and guidance towards the process.
So, Rosalie, in your view, how can then the IEBC be enhanced in terms of its secretariat and the commission?
How can
the IEBC independence be enhanced?
independence in terms of the corporate governance of the IEBC. Okay.
And no interference?
I think non-interference from third parties or within?
Third party.
Third parties. I think that is where we'll go back to the ethical leadership ideals. And if we look at the values of the IEBC, which is fidelity, the first one is fidelity to the rule of law. Then, of course, there's integrity, impartiality, and the others. If the Commission can stick to those values, that is one. Two, the code of conduct that the commissioners sign up to. Number one is independence from the state and state offices. Number two is independence from politicians and political parties. I think if the commissioners embrace ethical leadership, they should be able to insulate themselves from interference. I know there are many ways the state can try to interfere, like withholding finances and doing several things, but I think if you are a formidable team, you can be able to stand your ground and retain your independence.
Yes, but how do you get the independence when you depend all your financial operations from others, as in form of gifts, grants, treasury?
I think,
even if you have a formidable team, but you don't have the finances.
with proper strategy and management, especially around finances, because the biggest challenge is not only finances. One is to start lobbying for the setting up of the IEBC fund, which has been a challenge. Even the judiciary fund is a challenge, but it's something that with pressure you can be lobbied for. And then secondly, I think proper financial planning and procurement planning, so that you start some of these things really early, so that you're not waiting until the 5th year to ask for money to procure election materials. You're not waiting for the 5th year to ask. So there's a way you can do your financial planning, your procurement planning, and be able to overcome, especially that challenge where they use finances to frustrate entities.
Thank you, and all the best.
Thank you very much,
Chair.
Dr. Abdallah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdallah. I'll now request Mr. Gideon Solonka to ask you a few questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Odede, my first question would be that the Article 4.2 of the Constitution declares the Republic of Kenya as a multi-party democratic state. You go further to Article 38, 1A, and you find that Kenyans are given the right to form and participate in forming a political party. But again, the Constitution obligates political parties to meet 8 basic requirements. What are these requirements?
Thank you, Mr. Solonka. I may not name all 8, but I'll try. One, they should not be based on religious affiliation, ethnic affiliation, or others. They should have a national outlook. Second, they should not have obscene or offensive objectives to their party. 3, political parties. They should not engage in violence or propagate violence or such other issues. 4, they must embrace inclusivity, propagate equality, and the other one is they must embrace all special interest groups, the women, the marginalized, the minorities, the youth, and they should enable a space where all these people can be part of that political party. They must ensure that the political party is having a national outlook, so that every region or a multitude of regions are actually represented within the political party and its organizational structures. I think those are some of the ones.
Okay, thank you. I really wanted one which will lead me to the next question, and this was that they must subscribe to and observe the code of conduct for political
Parties.
Yes. Now, the electoral code of conduct, my next question, in the second schedule of the Elections Act at paragraph 6D, provides that all those bound by that code shall throughout an election period refrain from campaigning in places of worship or during burial ceremonies. Now, you've been appointed commissioner, and a report has been brought to you that 2 presidential candidates have been found campaigning in those prohibited areas during campaign period. what are the mechanisms available for enforcement of the electoral code of conduct in respect of those candidates who breach that conduct?
So thank you very much, Mr. Solonka. Every political party must sign the code of conduct, and all their candidates must also sign up to affirm that code of conduct. The registrar of political parties has a lot of powers under the Political Parties Act and under this code to actually take action against political parties that fail to adhere and live up to the ideals of this code of conduct. And they have powers including deregistration of a political party. I think this is a tool that has not been used and that really needs to be used. We need to start whipping political parties into shape by actually enforcing the code of conduct. So the registrar of political parties should be the one who summons the political party to come and justify why some action should not be taken against them and why they should not be disciplined for not living up to the code of conduct.
So you'll shift that responsibility to...
The registrar of political parties is actually a donated entity of the commission. So they work hand in hand, but actually the powers are lying with the registrar of political parties. But the commission can also actually, once you have notice of this, because when you look at the code of conduct for candidates that we have, it actually behoves them to adhere to the code of all, not to campaign in places of worship and in burial places. And so the commission also, which also has a tribunal that actually looks into election offenses, can actually take up this matter and hear it and decide upon it. I think in the last 2017 election, we saw one prominent case where the gubernatorial candidates in Bungoma were summoned before the commission, not by the registrar of political parties, were summoned before the commission and were fined. My only misgiving with that was that they were only fined and yet someone had died. The penalty should have been stronger and firmer. And I think that's what's lacking in terms of enforcement and compliance, because as long as the penalties are fines of 100,000, which for our politicians is small change, they will continue to do what they do with impunity.
So, Madam Odede, what are the specific penalties under that code of conduct?
Okay, for the code of conduct
that IEBC can impose to a candidate. What are the specific?
One, you can be barred from participating in the election. You can actually be stopped from participating in the election. You can be fined. You can be fined an amount that the commission determines that you need to pay in lieu of that transgression that has occurred. The political party, this is for the candidate, the political party can also be deregistered if the transgression is such that the commission finds that it needs to reach that level.
You may need to look at the code of conduct. One of them is a formal warning.
Yeah, there's warning as well, I missed that.
Okay, fine.
Yes, we talked
And then
about
also you can be prohibited.
Barred from contesting, yes.
From utilizing any public media for a period of time. There are so many of them. Okay? Now, what will the IEBC do if a candidate or a political party refuses to comply? They've been given a warning, they've been fined, they've been prohibited from utilizing media, but still they persist. What does the code of conduct say?
If a candidate fails to comply within the time frame that is provided by the commission, then that candidate will be prohibited or barred from contesting in that particular election and in the next election.
By the IEBC?
By the yes, the commission, because it says once you're found having committed an election offense, then you're barred from contesting in that election and for the next 5 years, for a period of 5 years.
I think, again, you need to look at that. There are very specific steps that IEBC can take. What challenges does the IEBC face in enforcement of the Electoral Code of Conduct?
Enforcing the Electoral Code of Conduct?
Yes.
I think the challenges are in enforcement and even identification of the offenses itself or the offenders. They do not have sufficient personnel on the ground to actually track and identify offenders and people committing offenses. They do not have a mandate to prosecute. The mandate to prosecute lies with the Director of Public Prosecutions. They may investigate, but their investigations will still be subject to the police investigations if it is to be taken to court. So these are some of the challenges because they do not have a clear enforcement mechanism that can actually translate this to prosecution before the courts of law.
Thank you. Now, in your view, should electoral officials retain the right to vote in an electoral process despite the due influence or perception of conflict of interest they may have on the electorate as being facilitators of the process? What is your take on that?
One, as a Kenyan, they actually have a right to vote, but sometimes rights can be limited because when you undertake to perform a certain duty, you actually let go of your rights. There are rights in personam and rights in rem. So these rights in personam can be limited, and for that reason, if you agree to be an election official, it is only fair for purposes of people viewing the process as being credible, fair, and for people not to feel the issue of conflict, that those officials do not vote.
Okay. What is a copy of register?
Sorry?
Copy of register. What do you understand by that term? A
Copy of the register.
Yes.
Copy of, okay, the register is the register of voters. It's a book that contains the names of people who are registered to vote in a particular ward, polling station, ward, constituency, or and nationally, of course. So the copy of the register, the original register is at headquarters in Nairobi. So copies of the register can be found at the polling station level, a copy of the register can be found at the ward station level, a copy can be found at the constituency level, and a copy can also be found in the county offices.
So in what form?
Sorry?
In what form?
It can be both the paper form and the digital form, the electronic register.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, what do you understand by this term, integrated electronic electoral system?
Okay, the integrated electronic electoral management system consists of 3 main parts. The first part is the biometric voter identification, registration and identification. The second part is the electronic nomination and registration of candidates. And the third part is transmission of the results, election results.
Thank you, Wakili, and all the best.
Thank you, Mr. Solonka.
Thank you so much, Mr. Solonka. I'll now ask Madam Elizabeth Mayo to ask you a few questions.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Rosalind.
Yes.
I want to take you to your case study, which actually you did on 30th. On the issue of inadequate voter education, which was one of the issues you identified, what you propose to be the solution is to enhance voter education and, where necessary, expand the number of organizations recruited to undertake voter education. So if you are appointed Commissioner Rosalind, how will you achieve this?
Oh, thank you very much, Mrs. Mayo. How do we, your question is asking, how do we expand the number of people undertaking voter education?
No, this is your...
Yeah, so you're asking
your
how do we
proposal.
achieve?
So how will you achieve
Yes.
what you have given us as a solution to a problem which was in the case
I
study?
think there are very many innovative ways of doing this. One, we can partner with schools and institutions of learning, like universities and polytechnics, so that they become agents of voter education as well. And this can be done by training the trainers in those institutions to actually impart voter education in those institutions, because this is a crucial lot. This is like a crucial lot that is turning 18 sometimes, or have just turned 18. So they are this, it would be targeted sort of voter education in that instance. So partnering with the institutions of learning, I think, is one way of expanding the base. Another way would be to engage other faith-based organizations and community-based organizations, especially for grassroots voter education, because these are entities that actually have a face and a feeling at the grassroots. So if we partnered with them and they already do some sort of civic education for other issues, it would be easy to train them so that they come on board as part of the team that helps this. So mostly it's just expanding your stakeholder engagement, expanding the number of people you deal with. You can also work on media and use the media to help this. And sometimes for grassroots, and I'm quite keen on grassroots voter education because then you can, because that's where it is lacking mostly. So you can use like the local media, the local radio stations. These are also very good. You can use the national government administrative offices, right from the chief, when they call their barazas, when they talk to these people. These are also very, very novel ways of just expanding the base of voter education. So you can use that as well. Beyond that, to expand it really, really broadly, again, let's have a proper curriculum. Let's train trainers and let the trainers be able to impact it further down. Right from, say, for instance, if you train the county election manager, they can train the constituency election what they call it, coordinator, and that coordinator can also cascade this lower down. So we can actually expand the base of voter education in that way.
Okay, thank you, Rosalind. So how will you take into consideration how to treat the youth when coming up with strategies on voter education?
Now, when you're
The interest
engaging
of the youth, yeah.
When you're engaging the youth, you must think like the youth. You must assume the regalia of the youth and think like them. What do they like? How do they like to receive their messaging? Quite recognizing that quite a lot of youth in Kenya do not have access to social media and other electronic gadgets, but there's also a huge percentage who spend the whole day on their electronic gadgets. So maybe one way would to be reach them where they spend the most time of their day on their social media. But beyond that, we can also use SMS platforms to do this so that you don't need internet, you don't need a smartphone. You can use SMS platforms so that any youth with a small phone can still get these issues. The messaging must be youth-friendly, the language must be youth-like, so that when you speak to them, it communicates to them the messages and actually makes them feel the value of this. But I think another strong way of inculcating into the youth the need to be voters and to turn up for elections is to encourage elections in the schools through school boards and school councils. This starts to stimulate in them the motivation to be part of a process where elections are held. So that is also another innovative way of capturing the youth.
Okay, thank you, Rosalind. So what does the law provide on voter education?
The law provides that voter education must be continuous voter education. It provides that the commission is responsible for conducting voter education. They must come up and they must accredit, they can, not must. They can accredit other entities to help with voter education, and they can also train trainers for voter education. They must also come up with a curriculum and the manuals that should be used for voter education. But voter education must be continuous and constant.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. So for IBC to comply with this legal provision, what do you think are some of the challenges that might stop them from complying with this?
In terms of voter education, the challenges that I can see are maybe finances, and also the geographical terrain of this country is also a challenge. And then also the networking and connectivity in the country is also a challenge. Now, when I talk of the geographical terrain, I'm saying there are places where people are probably pastoralists or nomadic in lifestyle. And so if you were to go and schedule a training, you might find no one turning up. You really need to map up and find out when you can find those people, when you can capture them. Those are real logistical challenges on the ground. Even accessing those areas sometimes is a challenge for the team. Sometimes the other challenge in voter education is special interest groups like the blind, the deaf. I think they have not been sufficiently catered for in voter education at the commission. I'm yet to see materials produced in Braille for voter education. Audio tapes, I have not come across them yet. I've seen some small videos on YouTube now and then, but we need to specifically think about our people who are abled differently and find a way of reaching them. And this is a challenge because I think it's still not in Kenyans to produce documents, even though it's a constitutional requirement to do all these things. So I think at the vetting board, we actually produced our documents in Braille using very, very cheap means. So it is doable. We used the Kenya Society of the Blind and produced for us documents in Braille, and it was cheaper than actually publishing a book. So these are things that can actually be done, and it's a challenge. The other challenge is finances, and financing can actually be a challenge for voter education, because I'm sure when money is run short, the one thing they will cut down is voter education and say, tuachane na hii, let's focus on this. So finances can also be a big challenge for voter education.
Okay, thank you, Rosalind. Because of time, I'll ask you one more question. In the run-up to the 2017 general elections, the IBC recruited 436,533 officials to manage the elections. Due to a possible increase in the number of voters, that is now this year, we feel this number might go up. And we are only having 13 months to go. What strategy would you put in place to ensure that these officials are recruited on time and that they will be ready to efficiently and effectively handle the 2022 general election? Because it has not been done.
Thank you for that question. I think it's really unfortunate that 13 months to the election, we do not have election officials on the ground. Because when you look at the election operation plan, that is something that should have occurred by now as per their plan. But be that as it may, I think they should be...
Don't talk of, I think they should. I'm asking you if you
I
are
am
the commissioner.
in the, so when I am in the commission,
yeah.
and God make
Think
it
about
possible.
yourself as the commissioner. Yeah.
Yeah, so when I get to the commission, and this is a task that is staring us in the face, I think we have human resource policies in place for recruitment, which we must adhere to strictly in terms of employing these people. So we will look at our human resource manuals, see what it says about recruitment, and take up the process of recruiting as quickly as possible, because this is a crucial task. It's not just recruiting them, they need to be trained, they need to be facilitated, and they need to be able to run the election in time. So I think my first point of reference will be the human resource manual, and using that manual, find a way of affecting recruitment of this staff.
Okay, thank you, Rosalind. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I'll now request the Vice Chair to ask you a few questions.
Yes, thank you, Rosalind. Yeah, you said that in 2007, you had to leave your home, vacate your place of residence in Eldoret, because of political reasons and the violence that occurred. Now, given where we are today, have conditions changed? Are we free from that era of having to vacate our homes and our places of residence because of fears and expected violence during elections? Is 2022 coming to 2022? Are we free from that era, given the conditions and circumstances that we are in today?
Thank you, Mr. Choker. No, we are not. And as I said earlier, sometimes I actually vote very early in the morning and take the first flight out of the region, just so that I'm in what I think is a secure zone. We are not out of the woods. And looking at 2022, if we do not handle things properly, it might be worse than 2007. I think that's the prognosis as of now. So we are not out of the woods, no.
What do we need to do?
Wow. What do we need to do to avert violence?
The reason why I'm asking you, the reason why I'm asking you that question, it's not a theoretical question. It's real. You're appointed, hopefully appointed to the commission. We are facing a major election, a general election in 2022. If, as you say, the conditions remain the same, how, as a commission, are you going to help in averting that situation?
Okay. I think first, and in direct line with the mandate and functions of the commission, is to conduct credible elections. And I think that is even the vision of the commission. So, with the intention of giving to Kenyans a democratic election. So that should be our first point of concern. How do we conduct an election that can be credible? So we need to put in place structures and systems that are credible. And how do we achieve structures and systems that are credible? Now, what are some of these structures and systems? One is, and a very crucial one, is the election technology. The election technology, we need to get it right. We need to ensure that the system is a system that will be accepted by all and that people will trust the credibility of the result of that system. And how do you do this? You must make sure that you test it, you audit it, and you maintain it. That is one. Secondly, you must bring the stakeholders on board, the political parties, the candidates, and everyone on board to see and test and assure themselves that this technology system works and can work properly, so that they are actually, you're buying their trust, you're buying their faith, so that they can actually trust the result of this technology. Because the greatest problem in Kenya, 2017, the court said transmission was the problem. And that was the main reason why the election was contested. So we must find a system where we will buy into the trust of these people by ensuring that the technology we employ is able to work, is able to meet the objectives, and is accepted by all players in the competition. And once that is done, we should then be able to deliver a credible election. But that's just one bit of the piece. We have several factors that still cause this violence. And some of the triggers are just incitement to violence by politicians. But I think maybe the bigger problem is the first past the goal system of elections that we have in this country. And so it makes the contest so bitter, so contested, and therefore we need to find a way to send peace messaging to the communities, engage the youth who are misused during elections to keep away from violence, find a way of involving communities, set up a security team, work with the NPS, work with the NIS, work with NCIC and the judiciary and the ODPP, so that people who are trying to breach the peace are not allowed to continue to do so. And we manage hotspots, we manage the flares of violence, we have early warning and early response systems. I think when we manage our credibility on this side and try and manage the community grounds around peace and conflict management, we'll be doing a good job.
Now, on your leadership, you played a major role in the vetting of magistrates and judges. You said you're vice chair of the commission?
Yes.
Yes. Now, that's a very complex undertaking, and you must have faced challenges. Could you just tell us what kind of challenges you faced and how you tackled them during that process?
I could talk of one or two occasions, maybe start with one occasion. There's one occasion when the chairperson was not around, and so I was effectively taking lead of the entity at that time. And I remember we were about to make some determinations of suitability relating to judges. And I got a phone call one afternoon summoning me to one of the arms of government for a discussion. And I was not told what the discussion was, but I believed that the discussion was going to center on the determinations we were going to give the very next day. So what I did is I told my entire commission that we have been summoned to appear, all of us, tomorrow. So let's appear tomorrow at 3. And when we arrived there at 3, they were thrown into a flurry. They said, "We thought you were coming alone. Why umeleta hawa watu kwa nini? Huh? You don't want to discuss with us on your own." And I said, we are a team. We work as a team. If you have anything to tell us, tell it to us as a team. And the reason I carried my team is my team had very esteemed Commonwealth judges. And they would not dare discuss what they wanted to discuss in the presence of these people. So they said, okay, let us set up the boardroom. And they set up the boardroom. And when we walked in, they turned around and said, "Rosalind, it's your meeting. Why did you want to see us?" So the conversation changed, and whatever they intended to achieve with us failed. And we were able to read our determinations the next day. And I found that very interesting. But I thought when you work as a team and stay together as a team, you're able to achieve together. And I think that really, really helped me. Had I set off on my own, I'd probably have been cornered to do things that I don't want to do. The other, and that reminds me when I applied for a certain job at certain times, somebody was sent to ask Rosalind, if she's given this job, will she play ball? And I asked them, what ball is this? If that ball means an illegality, I'm sorry, I will not play it. And of course, the rest of the story, I didn't get that job. So some of these things, you need to stand it's true to your ideals when the challenges come.
That very interesting experience. IBC, as a commission, has the word independent behind it. But the truth is, when we come to the elections, especially the period 6 months to the elections, the independence starts withering away because of that kind of interference. If you are in the commission, how would you use that kind of experience to protect the dignity and integrity of the commission?
I think if interference was to surface, it all depends on how we hold out together as a team. If some of the team give in and listen to what is being told to them, we are broken. We are actually fractured. And once you're fractured, once they find cracks, they actually make it wider. And once you're a fractured team, then things do not work. So the cohesion in the Commission's operations is very, very key. We must retain cohesiveness. We must work together as a team. We must not allow ourselves to be bought out for petty interest or other interests. Because at the end of the day, we take the oath of office individually, and we bear individual responsibility quite over and above the collective responsibility we have to Kenyans. So we must live up to the oath, we must live up to fidelity of the rule of law, and we must practice ethical leadership, which is outlined in the Code of Conduct for Commissioners.
Cohesion.
Yes.
This is a scenario, an emergent situation. You get appointed to the commission, you find a divided house, highly divided on partisan lines, political lines, ethnic lines, as it happens in many Kenyan institutions, and you're just a few months to the election. What would you do?
Now, when you find a divided house, what I will not do is take sides with either sides of the division. It is good to be able to try and listen to both sides and then try and reconcile the two sides, try and get them to align and to transform their thinking. And this can be done by now not agreeing to be pulled into the politics of their divisions and trying to rise above them and trying to show them the need for commitment. But if that does not work, team building really works. A session out of team building where issues are discussed honestly and truly can actually do a lot in terms of bringing people together. And I would hope that the first thing that will happen when we join the commission is that we'll have an induction and team building retreat where we'll be brought up to speed on what is happening and we'll be told what needs to happen. And then the other thing that's important is clarity on the strategy and what needs to be done. So once we have clarity, we need to then ensure that as members of the commission, we are sticking to the process and the structures and the systems that we've set in place, and that we are able to operate as an entity that that obeys the law and what we need to do, so that the individual differences should not tag the commission behind.
Okay, thank you, Roslyn.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Choka.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair. I'll now request Reverend Father Mutie to ask you a few questions.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Roslyn, you said you worked as the chair of Judges and Magistrate Vetting Board.
The deputy chair.
The deputy chair.
Yes.
During that time, even now, do you still feel that the vetting added any value to the judiciary?
Thank you, Reverend Father Mutie, for that question. Vetting as a process actually brought in some level of change. I remember in the early 2000s when advocates protested on the streets because people were talking about why hire a lawyer when you can buy the judge. Things may be bad today, but they're not as bad as it was in the 2000s. When we started vetting, we sent shivers down the judiciary. When we vetted the Court of Appeal and some very senior lawyers were found unsuitable, then people realized this process was going to be real. And people started to change. And people actually embraced a work ethic that was in consonant with the law. And for that period, people were very, very compliant. Some of the things that we did to improve the judiciary is we actually made recommendations that included improving the capacity of judicial officers so that we actually kept pointing out about their research skills, their writing skills, their analysis skills. And the Judicial Training Institute actually came to the vetting board to have a session with us and to ask us, what is this you're seeing that we are not seeing? And we showed them samples of judgments that were being written, samples of proceedings that were being recorded, and they have taken steps to remedy that. So in terms of competency, improving capacities, the vetting has helped. To an extent, I would say also in terms of corruption, integrity, to some extent it has gone out, but there's some people in that maybe it's a Kenyan problem, who just have this impunity and are just incorrigible and still want to take bribes, still engage in corrupt acts. And that is why at the end of the vetting process, we proposed that if vetting cannot be continuous, let it be periodic, because then we get to weed out the chaff. But I think vetting, to some extent, improved the judiciary. Certain structures that are in place, like the ombudsman, are things that came from our recommendations.
So would you recommend the vetting of the IEBC staff if you are appointed a commissioner?
Vetting of the staff might be a contentious issue because of their employment contracts and the way they are employed. But if it is founded in law, then it could occur. Vetting of staff could occur to where you suspect that there are individuals in here who are compromising the delivery of the mandate of the institution. I do not think that the commission has actually, the commission staff have been accused of deliberately compromising the election repeatedly. In fact, if you look at the judgment of the presidential petition, I think they said they did not want to say the commission had individual responsibility or a particular official did this and that, but they said there was a problem in the transmission of the results and in the systems. So it's probably a system issue and not a staff issue. And to support the staff, there could be capacity building, there could be continuous performance appraisals, and there could be trainings on ethical conduct of business within the commission.
Madam Roslyn, by a letter dated 12th June 2021, Mr. Oduor Kizito stated that, you worked for the Judges and Magistrate Vetting Board, during which you engaged in corruption and soliciting and receiving bribes from judicial officers who appeared before you. What would you tell this panel? Because this came, you remember in our advert, we also said, we also gave some time for public to give their views on the candidates that were shortlisted.
So thank you very much, and I thank the Secretariat. They actually brought that complaint to my attention, and I was able to to make a detailed response to it, to this panel. Now, the complaint really distressed me because it is totally untrue and unfounded. I have never in my entire career solicited for a bribe. I have never, ever solicited for a bribe. And in fact, I have fought corruption in the courts as an official of the Law Society. If you go back to North Rift and Eldoret, they will tell you we have been in the forefront of taking away judicial officers who engage in corruption and do not deliver honestly. We have fought against that sort of ill as a society and as an individual I have. So that complaint really distressed me, and what distressed me further was it lacked particularity, so that I didn't even know where to start responding when I read the complaint. But I decided to respond by setting out how we actually conducted the vetting to show that it was not quite possible to take a bribe and assist a judicial officer. That's because our systems, first of all, insulated us as the board from the process of investigating, coming up with the complaints against the judicial officer, contacting the judicial officers. We were insulated from that process. We were not involved in any of that work. We never investigated, we never interviewed witnesses, we did not look at those issues until the matter was coming up for interview, and that's when the file was given to us, and that's when we met the judicial officer. Now, that is then it's not possible then to have contacted a judicial officer when you don't even know the issues that you're going to interrogate that officer for. Secondly, we did not make decisions as individuals. We made decisions as a team of 9. And that was after giving the judicial officer a fair hearing and a right to call witnesses, and a right to be represented by counsel. Our entire proceedings were recorded on Hansard, transcribed, and kept. A copy was given to the judicial officer, a copy to the judiciary, and a copy we have now archived at the National Archives. So the records exist. And our reasons and findings were well-reasoned and very, very consistent. We actually read out all our determinations in public so that if there were any inconsistencies caused by corruption and bribery, the public would not have failed to pick it up. We actually ensured our decisions were consistent, in line with the vetting tool, and in accordance with the system that we had set. And then because the decision was made by a team of 9, this team of 9 included, and I'll keep saying, the esteemed judges of the Commonwealth that we worked with. I'm not sure I would be able to go to my lordship and say, my lordship, I have some money here to compromise this matter. It's not something that even occurs to me that I should do. It's not even something I would contemplate. I was here at a point where I think my career was at a turning point. I think I'd been honored with a very, very great responsibility to serve Kenyans, and I was not going to compromise that for a few coins. I was well paid as a commissioner, and I had no need to ask for extra money from anyone. I never solicited for a bribe. I told the panel that you can check my banking records for that time, you can check my M-Pesa records, you can check my asset inventory. Nothing changed in my life substantially at that period. If I was taking bribes, it would have been in the public domain. This is the first time an accusation is being made against me ever for soliciting a bribe, and it really, really distressed me. If you look at the commendations that my colleagues, the retired judges, gave me as they were leaving the country, they really spoke very highly of me. I have practiced law for 31 years. I've never been taken even to the Advocates Complaints Commission. I think it is really sad that someone would just write a 2-line letter and claim that I solicited bribes without any particulars. It really, really distressed me. And I want to deny those claims.
Thank you, Roslyn. In our earlier discourse with one of, in your earlier discourse, allow me to say that with one of our panelists, you said that, resigning from the Law Society of Kenya was a critical ethical decision. Allow me to ask further. Probably from the public domain, the issues were, one, the forensic audit of the accounts of the society, which divided the team into 2. Why do you think someone would refuse that, audited account, or the auditing of accounts, or delay them?
Okay, thank you, Reverend Father Mtie. Let me clarify. The issue that actually split the council into 2 was not the issue of forensic audit. The issue that split the council into 2 was the issue of the disciplinary process against the chief executive officer and secretary. The issue of forensic audit came up much later. In fact, out of all the charges that the secretary faced, none of them was financial misappropriation. So the issue of a forensic audit came later when we were already fractured. And it is at the meeting where I resigned that the members determined that a forensic audit should be carried out. So the issue of the forensic audit was now crystallized at the meeting at which I resigned. And I have nothing against a forensic audit. I think it is a good thing to do. I would love that the forensic audit be carried out so that all the news going around, all the allegations, all the insinuations against people are addressed. I do not know whether money has been stolen. There is no proof before my eyes today that any misappropriation funds has occurred. But I would love for a forensic audit to be done because the Law Society actually receives a lot of money in every year. And of course, we get audited accounts every year, But sometimes, if suspicion is alleged, I think it is very, very well that a forensic audit do take place.
Thank you for that. Finally, allow me also to do a follow-up question. You resigned from the Law Society of Kenya, and again you say it is a critical ethical decision that you made. Are you still the signatory of the LSK? The
No.
accounts of the LSK?
Once I resign, I lose all responsibility. I do not know whether they have changed their signatories at the bank, because that is an internal process at the Secretariat. It is not my task to write to the bank. Normally, the process is the entity gives signed minutes saying we have replaced X as a signatory. What I know is I have not signed any checks from the day I resigned, because then I would have no authority to do so. I'm no longer a member of council. They ought to replace me. I am aware one group appointed Faith to replace me. I am not aware whether they have effected that at the bank level.
Thank you so very much, Madam Roslyn. All the best, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Father. Rosalind, allow me to ask you a general knowledge question.
Dreading that.
If you happen to join IEBC, other than overseeing the management of the general elections, you'll also from time to time be involved in the management of by-elections. So my question is, can you name 5 parliamentary by-elections that the IEBC has conducted since 2017?
Oops. I know there's Kiamba.
One.
There was one in Juja.
2.
There was Matungulu.
Yes. 3.
I can only name those 3. I know there was another one in Western, but I can't remember around Bungoma.
There was one in...
And then there was the coast. But I can't remember the real name of the ward, because those are not they're not constituencies, they're wards, so they are harder to remember.
No, well done. There was Migori, Ugenya. So, well done. And now we've come to the end of your oral interview. I invite you to make any remarks you might have for the panel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muli and the team. I want to thank God for his grace that gave me the grace to sit here today. I lost my brother 3 days ago, and I didn't know I would do this here today, but I thank God for his grace. I also want to thank your secretariat, very professional, very efficient, very effective. If all secretariats work like them, I think Kenya would be I really want to thank them. And they've treated us with honor and respect when we arrive here. They've been very courteous and polite, and I thank them most sincerely. Communication has been very, very good, and I want to thank them. Finally, Dr. Muli, I want to thank your team. I think what you've done here has impressed Kenyans. Everybody's talking about it. This is a new way of doing things in Kenya. It's been very, very impressive. It has been very, very credible, a process, and I just want to thank your team for setting up this and doing it and committed to it. I think this is, I've done lots of interviews, and this has been very, very well run. And I thank your team. As you retreat to make whatever deliberations you have, I pray for you that you do this with all integrity and in all fairness, so that you lead Kenya to have the right team on the ground. So that's all I can say. Thank you very much. God bless you all, and I wish Kenya well in the next election.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Roslyn. Allow me on behalf of the panel to express our sincere condolences on the sad passing of your brother, but also to really appreciate that you did find the strength to come and do the interview more than that, to even apply. We don't take it for granted. There are other Kenyans who actually didn't do so. So thank you so much for that. And we really do wish you all the best. Allow me to request a member of the Secretariat to escort you. Please make sure you get all your original documents. And God bless you. You are our last interviewee. So we do celebrate that. We've also had 2 weeks of really meeting Kenyans who have shown an interest to serve this country. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and have a nice weekend, everyone.
Okay, I'll proceed to read a statement. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have now concluded the oral interviews for the position of member of the IEBC. We are pleased to report that we have interviewed a total of 35 candidates out of the shortlisted 36, with the exception of one candidate who withdrew his candidature under circumstances which are in the public domain. In line with the selection panel's commitment to transparency and its position of public trust, it is important that we bring to the attention of the general public information in respect to one of the candidates that appeared before us on Thursday, 8th July 2021. During her oral interview for the position of member of IEBC, Ms. Caroline Jerry Nganga informed the selection panel that she had graduated with an MBA from the United States International University, USIU, in 2016, but had not collected her certificate. Therefore, by a letter dated 9th July 2021, the selection panel wrote to the Vice Chancellor of USIU Africa, seeking to confirm the status of Ms. Nganga's master's degree and the authenticity of the master's degree transcript she provided. By a letter dated 15th July 2021, responding to the letter from the selection panel received on the same day, the Vice Chancellor of USIU Africa stated as follows, and I quote, "According to our records, Ms. Caroline Jerry Nganga never completed the course requirements for the award of a master's degree certificate from USIU Africa. Pursuant to Article 47 of the Constitution and the Fair Administrative Action Act 2015, the selection panel brought the matter to the attention of Ms. Caroline Jerry Nganga by a letter dated Friday, 16th July 2021. In the said correspondence, the selection panel requested Ms. Nganga to either appear in person on Thursday, 22nd July 2021 at 3 p.m. to clarify the matter or to submit a written response. Ms. Nganga submitted a written response on the 22nd of July 2022. In her response, she reiterated that her name, I quote, is listed on page 27 among graduates for the Masters in Business Administration. As the panel now retires to consider the candidate's performance, we wish to affirm that in the execution of our mandate, we shall remain true to the oath we took at the presence of the apex court of the land. Allow me to conclude by foremost thanking the Almighty God for the grace that He has extended to us throughout the entire process. The selection panel also wishes to sincerely thank all shortlisted candidates who honored our invitation and appeared before us. The rigorous 12-day exercise has reminded every Kenyan, every citizen of Kenya, of the wealth of resources that we have in our human capital. Through the intellectual capabilities demonstrated, candidates have rekindled in each and every one of us our patriotic spirit. The panel expresses its gratitude to the people of Kenya and to the Fourth Estate for their critical support in opening a window into the interviewing process, right from the psychometric test up to the end of the interviewing process. Asanteni sana. God bless you all, and God bless Kenya. Thank you. To the end of the interviews.